How can I listen to advice that is stamped with inefficiency? You can deny all the things I've seen, all the things I've discovered, not from my slumber, because too many others know what's happening out there. And no one, no government agency has jurisdiction over
that it looks like all these spiritual wisdoms are not going on, but actually I think they are, but they're not receiving the coverage that they deserve, they're not receiving the treatment that they deserve. But actually I think they are still there, and this is what's now resurfacing back now. And as people look around them at the world and they realise that, hey, the way I thought it ran isn't the way it ran, then all of the spiritual side of it is going to come back to rebalance this as well. So I remain optimistic, actually. I think we have to stay optimistic as well, and focus. We need to deal with what's not right, and we need to identify with what is not right, but also at the same time focus on what can be right and where the positives are. I think that's really crucial that we get that balance right.
Yeah, we have to have a not a solution at hand.
Well, otherwise we fall into the very fear that it would seem some people want us to be in. And as soon as we do that, if we give in to that fear, then it means that we are becoming victims of, the very control techniques that they're trying to use. We have to not fear. We have to deal with the things that we have to deal with confidence and as much optimism as can be mustered inside. And then I think we will begin to see a result. The problem we've got in the world today is that so many people are weighted down by the shadow of fear that's been put on them. And it makes people feel that they can't deal with it, that it's too big for them to change. And they will say, well, what can I do? I can't do anything. Whereas in fact they can, and collectively if each person were to say, I will play my part in making a difference to this, of course everything will transform. It needs that collective decision that everybody stands up as one and says, enough of this. Actually, we can change it, and we're going to change it. But you have to take that fear off their shoulders, because they have fear of what might happen to them if they were to speak out of term. They also have fear of ridicule from their friends and their family. What will they say about me? When they realise that, in fact, lots of people do share their views, and in fact, more people think the way we're talking here than we're allowed to know, that's when people realise that they're not alone. And they become far more willing to stand up and be counted and try to make a difference. And, there are so many people now doing this. I think that will all join up somewhere in the middle at some point. And any ruling elites or Illuminatis, or call them what you will, anybody with plans for their own central domination is going to be surprised and shocked at actually how much opposition there is to them. And I think in the end they will be left standing alone and looking rather lonely.
I hope so.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Well, we have to make sure that is what occurs.
Yes, and because I've had an interview on radio in Birmingham, and they were asking me about having a referendum again in Britain then on the Lisbon Treaty.
We say again, we've never had one.
Indeed, they've been promising. Right, okay. They've been promising it for 26 years.
It will not happen. There will now not be a referendum.
And they asked me, is it even useful for doing it? And I answered honestly. I said, if you're the only one that's going to do it, it's not going to make a difference. But if you do it, somebody else gets the idea from you, and the whole of Europe or 10 countries in Europe start to do it, what are they going to do? If 10 countries say no and they stay by their point, the people have enough power to do that. We always have, but we just don't realize it. Okay. Then they can't pass it. And but people tend to think that their actions are futile, but it's true what you say. Every little bit of action is worth the effort. And it's gonna help the cause, if we can call it that.
You have to believe that you can make a difference, because that's when you get this domino effect. One person acting in a certain way will influence so many other people around them to think, well, hey, if they can make a difference, I will. And then collectively that becomes a mass action that you will see a difference on. Yeah, the Lisbon Treaty is a very good example of how we are lied to all the time. For instance, in Britain, we were promised a referendum by both the Labour Party, who were in power. They didn't give us one. the Tory party, who are probably going to be the next government in Britain, they said that there would be one. Now they say there will not be one. Partly because it's already happened, and to some degrees it is too late, but I think they always knew that that would be the case.
Yes.
And I think, therefore, basically they've managed to sound like they're opposing something that actually they're going to do nothing to stop, and I think had never had any intention of doing so. I think this is the problem. Whoever's in power, it's always the same agenda behind the scenes.
Yes.
And everybody knows this in their heart of hearts, but we still pretend that electing a new government in might make a difference. But it always amounts to the same thing, with a few cosmetic differences, you know. But people are wise to this now, and I really do think that there's enough people seeing that this is going on, and I think that this will become something. It will become a movement. Well, there already is a movement, but it will become something that will become effective, not just talk. You will see people that might surprise you, middle class, middle-aged people that are not generally seen as where revolution comes from. A kind of revolution of spirit is coming in there, and we're going to see a real effect of that, because these people are not stupid. I think that governments and, you know, the powers behind the powers, I think they honestly think we're all stupid. And if they think that, they've made a mistake. And I think they're going to badly come off with that, because I think they're not seeing, you know, the opposition that is bubbling up against them. Yes. And when it comes, I think it will be so big, it might take them by surprise. And which, of course, will be a good thing. But, there's definitely a movement now of people saying enough is enough, and that will become something.
Yes, and
there's no question.
I think it's just a point of directing the efforts to advance our, I'm not going to call it our plans, but to advance the good in the world. Because, for instance, when we had our last elections here in Belgium, it was a reflection of how much we distrust our government, but it was, I didn't vote. I heard you talking about voting, and I tend to believe that you're right, but I have no one to vote here. I have no one to vote for. I don't even have a small party that I can vote for.
Right.
And most people think like that here, and we have to vote. We don't have a right to vote. We have a duty to vote. But what happened the last elections? 62% of the votes were either not valid.
That's a huge percent.
Were blanco, were just blank,
right? Okay.
Or just didn't show up like I did. I didn't show up at all because I had no one to voice my opinion, and that's a bit. People here start to see that politics is one big melting pot, but they don't see what they can do about it. They say, "Oh well, it's politics. I don't care. It's not a part of my life." But we have to step away from that belief, because a lot of people think that politics doesn't belong to them. It's for those politicians and their rules, and they'll get it right. But it's never that way. If we don't tell them what we want, and we don't insist on doing what the people want, they won't do it. They'll advance their cause. They'll advance the industry. They'll advance everything but our well-being.
You need to start your own party, clearly. So then you've got someone to vote for. Vote for yourself.
Yeah.
But there's something to that. I think everybody that's not happy with the system that we have, if they can't find anybody that can represent them, they have to stand up to become something that represents themselves. I really believe that there's a real need for this, because all the time people sit back and say, well, there's nothing there for me, I'll do nothing. That's the danger, is that then those on high think, great, they're not interested in what we do, so we'll do anything at all. And I think Michael Moore, the American filmmaker, he has said that you should always try to get yourself voted for even local elections, local councils, anything. Become a part of the process of decision making, however low down. Because if all the people that cared did that, this would eventually filter up to the top. All the time you've only got people that are interested in power or misuse or manipulation. They're always the ones that are going to be in command if nobody else will put the effort in to stand against that for things that they really care about. So we all need to step into our responsibility.